Well, J Street's an attempt to give a voice to a very substantial number of Americans, primarily but not exclusively Jewish, who believe that it's actually in the interest of the United States, in the interest of Israel, and the interest of the entire Middle East for there to be a peaceful resolution to the conflicts that rage between Israel and its neighbors. And so pro-Israel for too long has implied that there's an anti, that it's one side yes, the other side no. We believe that this is a win-win proposition, that if we can actually come to a resolution of this conflict, it's good for everybody involved. And so we're trying to redefine what it means to be pro-Israel.
I remember during the Clinton White House, one of the most interesting developments was not only for Arab Americans that he invited us in as often as he did, but on the Jewish side, I remember the whoops and yells, the sort of the anger at the fact that when he'd invite the Jewish leadership in, that he would always include the pro-peace elements of the Jewish leadership. Right. And he was respecting them and empowering them in a way, and kind of waiting for a development like this, where the alternative voices would come forward. And so they now have come forward. What is the institutional makeup of J Street? I read you talk about a family of organizations. What does that mean? Well,
we've set up two separate legal entities. One of them is what's called a 501c4. It's a lobby. It is allowed to go up to Capitol Hill. It's unrestrained as to what it can advocate for. The other organization is a political action committee, a PAC, and it can endorse candidates, and it can then fundraise for those candidates. And this is something that people who share...
Is it affiliated, unaffiliated?
It's unconnected, so legally unconnected, and they operate independently, although co-branded. And we've never had this before in the pro-peace movement.
Do you see it as a competitor to AIPAC?
What we have is a set of views that there hasn't been an advocate for. And so we're filling a vacuum. We're not anti any organization. We're anti certain views, and they're held by a wide range of groups. But we're not taking on one institution and trying to take it on.
We have worked in the past with Brit Tzedek Shalom and Americans for Peace Now and
Right.
Israel Policy Forum. Where do those groups fit into this structure?
They are, and not to get too legal here, but they are what's called 501c3 organizations. So they're charities, and they can do public education. They can actually go up to Capitol Hill and advocate, but there are strict restrictions on their involvement in politics, strict restrictions on their lobbying. It's actually a complete ban on politics. And so this is the political arm of that movement. Okay. The leaders of all of those groups are on our advisory council. We're working hand in hand together.
You must have been pleased then with the comments that Barack Obama made in Cleveland, where he talked about the fact that being pro-Israel doesn't mean being pro-Likud. It means respecting diverse points of view, et cetera. That's another legitimator.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the way he phrased it was we really need to begin a conversation about what it means to be pro-Israel. And, much as he's trying to do on the issue of race in this country, to begin that exploration and to have people understand the other, to recognize that there are multiple sides to discussions. I think, he's the kind of leader that can help to open up those kinds of conversations.
Let me get folks out there in the conversation. If you want to call us from overseas, it's 001-202-842-5056. Here in the U.S., it's 1-800-528-2090. There are some who suggest that it's too late, that the culture here in Washington is so inbred. You have congressmen making judgments based on instinct that is, at best, ill-informed, but just what they think is pro-Israel, and then they just go and do it. And then you have in Israel itself a culture that has evolved of entitlement among the sort of the extreme settler movement, with governments not able even to control them. I mean, the actions that some of the groups have undertaken in Jerusalem just in the last couple of months, seizing properties, et cetera. And then that's had an impact in the Arab world, where, especially among the Palestinians, because of all of this accrual, there's a lack of trust. Can it be broken down? I mean, are you late in the game? Can you make change? Or not that doing the right thing shouldn't be done, even if it's late to make real change, but do you have optimism that you're going to make some impact here?
Well, I do think it is late in the game. I mean, I won't try to argue that it's not. I think that the situation on the ground is dire. I think the situation here is very locked in. And this is an effort that should have happened 10 or 15 years ago. So I will say that. That said, I am optimistic, and there's a few things that make me optimistic. One, the reception that we're getting on Capitol Hill, on the internet, in terms of the thousands of people that have signed up in just a matter of weeks to join us in this effort. So I think this is something there's a thirst for, and that makes me feel optimistic. I think, second, the support that we get from Israel. We've got a number of generals, diplomats, politicians who've signed a letter of support and who are the voice of the mainstream in Israel. And they are thanking us for setting this up here because they are so concerned about the impact of the American political dynamic on their future over there. And so I'm optimistic for a number of reasons.
I've met members of the Knesset from the peace side in Israel who say their biggest problem is that they get no consistent support from American congressional leadership. They say liberal, progressive Democrats who ought to be supporting liberal, progressive Israelis don't. They support whatever government's in power. You won't take that position then?
No, because there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. It's you can't be consistently right.
What are you going to do about politicians who, for lack of a better word, seek the lowest common denominator? I mean, I'll never forget Hillary Clinton going to Dov Hicken in Brooklyn, seeking his support. And I thought that is a person whose support one should not want. The mistaken assumption being that if you get that guy in your camp, it neutralizes other opposition, but it's a bad thing, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think the problem is that our side's been quiet for too long. We haven't put together a political mechanism to say there's meaningful political support for you for saying the right thing on this. There's no consequence to doing the wrong thing, and there's no benefit to doing the right thing. We abandoned the playing field in terms of politics, and that's why so many of the pro-peace groups are happy to take part in this, because they recognize the vacuum that's been created.